Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. This is our Decades of Horror. Noah picked the 70s, which I'm finding is a very hit and miss decade for film.
A lot of people would disagree with you on that.
I don't know, and hey, two of my favorite films are from the 70s, The Exorcist and obviously Dawn of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not here to talk about those. Noah, what did you pick and why did you pick it?
All right, so I picked Don't Look Now, which is a film by Nicolas Roeg starring Donald Sutherland from the 70s. I picked it actually because I'd never seen this movie before and I've always been curious about it. But it's a movie about this family that loses their daughter who drowns at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Cuts to some time later, and you see them in Venice. The husband, played by Donald Sutherland, is working restoring a cathedral in Venice. And you see, I guess, just like the aftermath of that event of losing their daughter and how they both cope with it in different ways. There's some weird surrealness that gets into it with these two sisters, one of them blind, may or may not be able to see the dead or communicate with the afterlife, and the wife kind of gets into a relationship with them. But yeah, I mean that's the basic premise, and that's why I picked it.
Okay. So yeah, as you said, this is very much about like grief and the loss of a family member. I was getting a lot of Hereditary vibes from this. I don't know if you got that.
I did think of Hereditary a few times, yeah.
Ari Aster has to be looking at this.
Well, I think this is a pretty influential movie for a lot of different horror movies. I assume that Ari Aster is probably a big fan of this movie, if I had to guess.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into the meat of this thematically, because obviously that's, I would have to assume, a big part of what people like about this movie. What do you think it is saying about grief and loss?
Well, I think it's mostly just an examination of how people deal with it differently. And I had an interesting experience watching it, and I'm not sure if I have. My interpretations kind of change the more I think about it. But when I was first watching it, I assumed that the wife kind of is more in denial about losing her daughter, and because because she gets into the thing with the two sisters, and she's kind of pushing her husband to be like, oh yeah, like our daughter is at peace, and she wants him to like get into the sessions with her, but she's like more open to believing this crazy stuff, whereas he is more like, no, our daughter is dead, you need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But then it kind of gets interesting because I think you could also read it as he hasn't fully dealt with it in the proper way either, because he's kind of like not dealing with it. And then it gets a little, this movie gets a little strange and surreal later, and he starts to see his daughter in different places. It turns out to be something completely different by the end of the movie, but he thinks he's seeing his daughter in the city of Venice, and it kind of goes into the thing of when you lose someone you love, often some people like start to see them, or like I guess just like are like thinking about them, and then they start to see them in different places. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure like concretely what it's saying. It's something I'd have to think about a little more, but that's kind of just what I was thinking about it as I was watching it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the first half is, I don't want to say stronger, but more focused. I'm just not sure at the end of the day, because this is a movie about something. I'm not sure at the end of the day what it's saying. Especially with that ending, like I don't know what that last 10-15 minutes has to do thematically with the rest of it.
It starts to get caught up in the like the supernatural elements of the story, I think. because that becomes way more like of a part of the story in the third act.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at a certain point you lose the wife's POV, and you're mostly focused on Donald Sutherland, who may or may not have the same ability to like tap into like the second sight, as they say in this movie, as the blind woman does. It's left ambiguous, and I don't know. I do like that it's left ambiguous, but I think that's also maybe like the least interesting thing about this movie. We can get into the reveal at the end, but I thought that it was great, and it made a lot of the stuff from earlier make more sense.
Okay. So yeah, we will get into that because I'm the ending was insane, but I wasn't sure what to make of it.
I will just say I think Austin would love the ending of this movie.
No, Austin is gonna love this movie.
Yeah, if he ever watches it.
I think my biggest issue is the first 2/3 of this film are, I hate to say it, but kind of boring.
Oh, the first 2/3 you think are boring?
I think it gets interesting towards the end a little bit, especially because that last 10 minutes are insane.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even for 70s films, this is slow.
Yeah, I mean, I was wrapped into it. I was really with it. I see what you're saying about it losing you in the third act, because I didn't completely have that, but it kind of took a turn. There's a certain point, and I guess we'll just talk about it. Like, there's a certain point where the film maybe leads you to believe that his wife either died or was kidnapped by these two sisters. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, all right, if it turns out that none of that actually happened, I don't know, this movie's gonna have to justify that, and that's what it does turn out to be. And I don't know if it completely does, but it's just baffling because, like I said earlier, the first 2/3, I like the first 2/3 because the wife is getting an equal amount of screen time as Donald Sutherland is. They're kind of like dual protagonists, and you're following both of them. At a certain point, like halfway through the movie, it just kind of becomes about him, and I think I lose a little bit of interest after that, but I'm still with it for the most part.
He's giving a really good performance, but yeah, like I think that is kind of the turning point because like we said, this is very much about grief and trauma. But this is a character that is not allowing himself to feel that. So what are we exploring there? Like, are we exploring what it's like to withhold that stuff? Why is there so much supernatural stuff in this film?
It's interesting because it almost feels tacked on to, it feels like a separate element to, I don't know how well it's woven in with the grief element, but I do think ultimately it is, like you were saying, it is probably about how some of us fail to properly deal with grief. I don't know, in normal circumstances that doesn't usually lead you to getting killed by a midget.
So I did look, and apparently this is based on a 1971 short film, and that stuff is in the short film. So I do wonder if part of it is taking a short story, not short film, sorry, and turning it into an almost 2-hour film. You do have to stretch some of that stuff out, but instead of stretching out like maybe the lore and making that lore connect with the messaging and thematic themes of this film, they're just like, I don't know, we're just gonna waste time for like an hour and a half.
Well, I don't know, because I feel like this is a movie I'd have to spend more time with, because I trust that it is saying something about that. I just don't. It's a movie I kind of wish I had more time to think about before I started to review it, honestly.
Leave it to you to pick a dense movie for a review.
I was very curious about this movie.
And before anybody comes at us in the comments, this is a review based on a first viewing. I literally finished it at the time right before we started.
Yeah. I've had time to think about it. I was gonna do some notes on it, but time kind of got away from me. But I think it's safe to say I enjoyed this more than you did, just based on your reaction. Yeah, I thought Donald Sutherland was fantastic in the movie, and the actress who plays his wife,
Julia
Julie
Christie.
Christie, I think.
Julie
Yeah,
Christie.
she's really good too. I really buy that. I really buy them as a couple, and that they do love each other deep down. But there's this thing that, there's the elephant in the room of their child's death that's really getting in between them right now. And I thought exploring that status quo in the first half of the movie was really what I was getting into the most.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think if you took the first two acts and then replaced the third act with something that ties all of that together, it would have been more interesting. But real quick, I also want to note the wife in this is Madame Rosmerta from Harry Potter 3.
Oh, okay.
That blew
I didn't
my
know
mind.
if I'd seen her in anything else. Yeah.
So I guess let's get into the ending for just a moment, and then we can go backwards. The ending of this film is him realizing that all the shit that he's been seeing is him trying the universe or his abilities trying to warn him of
The killer.
His death.
Yes.
Which is a cool idea of its own. And arguably, this is the other thing I struggled with. I don't think it becomes a horror movie until the last 10 minutes.
Oh, interesting. I think that first scene is pretty unsettling, and just in the way that it's edited.
However, what does that have to do with anything else in the film?
No, like I said, it does, at least on a first viewing, it does kind of feel tacked on. But yeah, I mean, because there's this whole subplot about a killer on the loose in Venice. And it's mentioned at the beginning, but I don't feel like it doesn't. I don't, unless I missed more foreshadowing to it. It kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. But the killer is wearing the same red coat that his daughter was, so he sees the killer here and there in Venice, and then later when he sees who he thinks is his daughter, chases him, and then turns around and it turns out to be the killer. And that's in my head when I thought, oh, okay, that's what that was. But yeah, I'm not sure if that was telegraphed or set up clear enough before that. But I mean, when it happened, I still got what they were doing.
Well, so, and it's interesting because I just had this thought as well. That stuff feels like an Italian movie, right? That's like a giallo thing. But then the rest of the movie's not?
Not really, no. It's fitting though, because the movie's set in Italy.
Yeah, and obviously, giallos already existed. Those start in '63, so it kind of feels like two films competing with each other. And one of them is a thoughtful drama about loss and marriage after that loss, which is a common theme in horror. Also, fuck you! You picked another trauma movie.
Wait, what was the other trauma movie I picked?
No, because we have the running joke about the horror movies being about trauma. Yeah. You picked another one.
It's about trauma.
And I that's why I say a lot of this doesn't feel like a horror film. Large chunks of this movie just feel like a drama. But I think there's enough there that I really got into. Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad fan.
Let's say that like it's an insult. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a movie that I trust has a point with all of that stuff. I just feel like I probably should spend more time with it. Maybe give it a rewatch.
Now, I will say before everybody starts typing in the comments, blah, 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 this is also a movie that I need to rewatch. These are just first thoughts, discussion.
Yeah, exactly. I also, to go on to another point, I also think there's a motif here with water because it's set in Venice, which there's mostly surrounded by water,
Hmm.
and then the opening scene, obviously, the daughter drowns, and there's that slow mo shot of him carrying her uh, from the lake or whatever, the body of water where she drowned. Um, it's interesting because I always heard it that water signifies life or rebirth in fiction, but it seems like they're kind of using it for death in this movie. Um, I'm not entirely sure, what to make of that yet, but it's just something interesting I picked up on. I don't know if you have any comment on any of the like visual symbolism or motifs in the movie.
I mean, I definitely think it's not coincidental that they pick Italy to go to. Um,
Yeah,
like I said, because I definitely see some Giallo inspiration, or Giallo. I don't, whoever, whatever.
Giallo.
And there's something there with water. I think. Okay, so do you think maybe we could have tied that all together if instead of having his throat cut, he drowned?
Well, because that's kind of what I thought. I mean, it's not the same thing, but he's drowning in his own blood, basically, at the end.
Okay, that's a stretch.
It's something I thought about when it happened. I don't
Don't
know.
tell me it didn't happen. I saw it happen.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm going to call film school with Torgo here. So I'm seeing a lot of people talk about the unorthodox editing techniques. Did any of that come out to you?
Slow frame rate, the slow motion of the shot of him carrying his daughter. The only other one I thought of is we should talk about the scene that was controversial at the time, which was the sex scene. That is
I was
intercut.
surprised it was here.
Yeah, it was intercut. That scene is intercut with them having sex, and then the aftermath of that, where they're getting ready to go out for dinner. I thought it was interesting that they're framed alone, and then it cuts back to them like together in this very intimate moment, and then when it cuts back to them alone, and um, I just I just think maybe it's trying to say that like yeah, deep down they do love each other, but there's that thing of their daughter dying that's really just keeping them from fully coming back together, I guess. I'm not sure if that's what the scene was trying to say, but that's one of the scenes where the editing really jumped out to me.
Okay.
Um,
So I had a
yeah.
question about that too, because the way that played, obviously, this is me looking at it through modern sensibilities. It looked like she was having an affair with someone, and like it was him wondering
Oh,
if
really?
she was it Donald Sutherland's character that you're supposed to be seeing in that sex scene?
Yeah, yeah, that's him.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's him. Um, yeah, because you see them in this very intimate moment, and then cuts to them individually. They're not in the same shot. They're doing completely different things separate from each other. Um, yeah. So yeah, it's. I thought it was just a very well edited scene, and like I said, I'm not sure if that was the purpose of it, but that's kind of what I got from it.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and it was a very controversial scene for the time because at the time it was seen as explicit. I think we've probably had worse since then.
Probably.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I
Yeah.
was very surprised just because movies. The only movie that I can think of that even has nudity. Now, mind you, I haven't seen a lot of '70s films. I'm no expert, but the only one I've seen that has even a hint of nudity is like Halloween.
Yeah, there's definitely more movies with nudity in it. I don't know if you see like a sex scene play out in this like explicit of a way at the time. So it was groundbreaking for that.
Well,
And it's not
and
like
keep
a
in mind,
sleep.
everyone who's watching, this is like 73. This is early in the 70s.
Yeah. So I can see why it was so controversial for the time. But
Yeah.
looking back on it now, it's not like sleazy or anything. Like it didn't feel distasteful to me.
Oh, so you're
Um,
saying it wasn't good?
I know that's what. Yeah, you like the sleaze, but no. But you mentioned the giallo influence. I can see a lot of that mostly in the filmmaking, in some of the editing, and then the movie also uses a lot of snap zooms, which was probably common at the time. I honestly, I need to see more 70s movies. I know people love that decade of film, but it did those techniques did remind me a lot of giallo. So it kind of has that DNA like all throughout the movie. Plot wise, it doesn't really feel like a giallo until the last half, though.
Yeah, I would definitely say agree with that. Um, so let's talk about, I guess, the most important thing, because obviously we talked about the themes, and this is a theme heavy film. But arguably the most important thing of any film is the characters. How did you feel about the
Yeah.
characters? Because I found them to be a little undercooked.
Oh, really? Well, because like I said before, I was really into them. I was really following this relationship for the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's about the time where she goes back off to England to see her son who's sick. That was when I kind of the movie kind of lost me a little bit because we lose the wife's perspective. We lose her POV in order to build mystery with the stuff happening with Donald Glover's character, Donald Sutherland.
That's a different guy.
Yeah, he couldn't have been in this movie. But I didn't find them to be undercooked. I guess I can see why you say that because you don't get a whole lot of
Tell me one
information.
thing about both characters. Like what one hobby or one like character
Well,
trait.
he's restoring a cathedral in Venice.
Okay, but is that his job or is that his hobby?
I, it could be both. I mean, it could be it seems like a job he's passionate about. No, because in the opening scene, he's doing some like work with restoration, so that's set up from the beginning. I see what you're saying though, but
And I don't mean that as a harsh criticism, because it's not. I like plenty of movies where the characters are paper thin. Um, I think my problem with this movie is that it does, in some ways, to me, trades character work for thematics, but the themes don't, like they're not. It's an examination, but like where does this movie fall? Like what is the movie actually saying about those themes, other than just like, well, here is something that happens.
that's fair criticism. It's not something like
I'm gonna ruin this movie for Noah.
no, because I still really like it.
No.
But but I don't know. I don't need the characters to be completely fleshed out. I think that they were fleshed out enough for what the movie is attempting to do. Um,
Okay, but then the
I can
question
see what it was
rewinds
trying to
to,
do.
at the end of the day, what is it trying to do?
I mean, I think it's trying to be an examination of grief. I don't. It's
But
not
what does that
fully.
examination lead to? Like at the end of the day, if you examine something, you have to. I would think you would have to come to some kind of conclusion, or
Not
there's.
always.
So you think
There's
it's an
plenty of.
open-ended examination? At the end of the day, there is no. Um.
Well, there's a lot of movies that examine a certain topic that that examine different sides of it and don't really come down on a concrete conclusion because the topic is so big and people experience it in such different ways. I
Mhm.
think this might be an example of that. Um, just first viewing, it's hard for me to like write a thesis on this movie or anything like that. But it's got a lot of ideas, and I find the way that it explores those ideas to be fascinating. From your perspective, I get where you're coming from, but it's not really something that it didn't really bother me as much as it did you, I guess.
Ya bastard.
Ya bastard.
You're supposed to agree with me, Noah.
We've had many disagreements on both channels. Yeah. Do you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
Like I said, I think Donald. I almost did the same thing you did.
I made you do it.
Donald Sutherland is really good in this movie. I definitely want to see more of his stuff. I'm a sucker for movies that take place in Italy, especially horror.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You got to see Immaculate, but more horror movies should be set there.
I've seen the first Omen, so
yeah. Are
that
you ready for? Counts. Are you ready for the Rosemary's Baby prequel?
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Is it?
I'll send you the trailer. It looks like somebody saw the first Omen and went, "We can do that."
Oh, jeez. Oh no.
Oh, jeez.
That's gonna date this pre-recorded review.
I'll probably cut some of this stuff out.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, because you said that it was ambiguous, and I know you often like ambiguous stuff in your films. Do you think this is too ambiguous, like, or is it confirm enough that there are clairvoyant people in the world, in this world?
Yeah, I think where I'm at right now, I think it's saying that there are clairvoyant people in this world. Because from memory, like, there's too much weird stuff that happens in this movie that I don't know how you explain other than that. Because you have the opening scene with Donald Sutherland inside, and when he cuts his finger on the picture, that's about the time when his daughter starts to drown. And it's like he senses it. I don't know if you can explain that as clairvoyance, or I'm not a father, so I don't know, like parental intuition. Like, I don't know if you would be able to like sense your child is in danger. You could explain it that way, but I don't know how good of an explanation that is. Yeah, so I think right now I'm leaning more on the side that there are supernatural elements to this world, but I can also see the reading that they are just crazy people. And I think it's a little bit more interesting in something like this than, say, The Shining, the Kubrick movie, because in that there's the theory that, oh, they're all just crazy, but
see, and I don't buy that.
When you think about that, not a lot of that makes sense.
The last thing I have to ask you before we call it, before we end this review, or move on to final thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to go back to the ending. So what drives me nuts the most is the midget woman that kills him. I have many questions. So let's start with the first one. Why is she dressed like the daughter?
Well, I think that is just supposed to be what the killer wears. Because you see that picture at the beginning.
But isn't that really coincidental?
I don't know. It's just a raincoat. Like, people can have the same raincoats.
Yeah, but
it's not too much of a stretch for me.
What are the odds that a killer is wearing the exact same outfit as his deceased daughter?
Okay, so but you remember the scene at the beginning, the picture that he cuts his finger on. In that picture, he sees like the back of a little person with a raincoat on. Mm-hmm. That's not supposed to be his daughter. That's the killer. So I don't know. It's something that was planted from the beginning of the movie, and I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't. Um, yeah, I don't know. Thought I had more to say on that, but
Okay, second, why did she kill it? So that's the serial killer.
yes.
Okay. So I'm going to change my complaint.
Okay.
If this whole movie was just about uh a midget serial killer running around killing people, this movie would be a 10 out of 10. Like if that stuff was in this whole
You're
movie,
just describing the movie Austin wants.
that's the movie that I want.
Um, I mean, it would probably be a more. It'd probably be a movie with a more concrete theme and narrative for you to latch onto. I don't know if it would be a better movie necessarily.
It would be a better movie, trust me.
Okay. This is another case of us coming at it from two different sensibilities, which is fine.
Yeah, no, like
Yeah.
I give no people in the chat should know by now. No, I give no shit. He gives me shit. That's how this whole process works.
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks to our Shining discussions.
Well, I mean, you're just wrong about that because you haven't read the book.
I will. And I don't need to have read the book to appreciate the movie, but I will read the book.
You need to read the book, you motherfucker. All right.
Okay.
No.
That's my
Whatever
name.
whatever your name is. Do you have anything else we should talk about before we move on to final thoughts?
I think we pretty much covered all of it. The themes, the sex scene, every famous thing that you hear about this movie. If I can, I think I'll just move on to my final thoughts. I really like this movie. I really enjoyed it. It's something I've always been interested in, and I'm glad I finally checked it out. I was kind of 50-50 on whether or not you'd like it, because I know you like some surrealist horror. So I was like, I don't know. John's either going to find this mostly boring, or he's going to like, the weird serial killer stuff.
I like the ending a lot more than I did before we started talking about it. I like that last 10 minutes.
Okay.
I just don't think it ties everything together.
Yeah, that's the thing. It kind of feels like two disparate elements. I feel like maybe there is a connection, like I said before, but like I said, I just don't know yet. So I'm giving that the benefit of the doubt. But as a package, I really enjoyed this movie. Great performances, great editing, cinematography, very unnerving. This is the kind of horror that I really enjoy. I love the schlocky stuff too, but like this is more like my horror.
Noah's once again showing he's a fraud.
So I would give this movie, for now, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
This movie
You're gonna
needs
give it much lower.
I am. This movie needs to pick a lane. There's a lot to like about this movie. I like Donald Sutherland. I like the ideas. I love the just like setting and atmosphere. But this movie needs to either be 20 minutes shorter or just more focused. Great last 10 minutes, maybe one of the greatest last 10 minutes of a movie ever. 2.5 out of 5.
Wow, 2.5.
Okay. 2.5. Not the worst thing ever. I just find it kind of painfully average until the end.
Okay, fair enough. You're wrong, but fair enough.
All right. This is, as you may see when you click on this, part of our Decades of Horror. This was Noah's pick for the 70s. For the 80s, we've got 50s, 70s, 80s, and 90s coming up for you. RIP to the 60s. Nobody wanted to do that one.
RIP.
But keep hit that subscribe button if you liked this review, and let us know what you thought about this movie down in the comments. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.